Hello, our truth warriors. Today's guest is bringing something together that makes a big difference in father and son relationships, showing how we carry a lot more with us than we realize. All the way from Oregon in the United States, it's great to have with me Adam Tutor to talk about his mission to bring a key and solid bond back to the connections that we all have. Hello, brother. How are you?
Mm, I love to hear your interpretation of the medicine that I bring to the world. It's good to feel you, brother.
No, that's great. So, Adam, can you firstly explain to everyone that's watching what it is you're doing to bring about this change?
Yeah, Chris, thanks so much. My name is Adam Tutor. I go by the disciple of the wild, and I am here to lead a micro movement of men and boys across the threshold of transformation and back again to a place of service. And this place of service is where we can feel our hearts, we can heal our families, and we can be in deeper relationship with the earth around us. And so my deeper purpose in that is to gather together these men and these boys, fathers and sons, around the fire, around the trees, around the waters, in the ways that our ancestors and our lineages have done for time immemorial,
Yeah,
and help them remember the gifts that these men, these cultures have given us, and how do we live that in a modern context in a healthy and mature and informed and intentional way.
yeah.
So that's what I'm here to do.
And that's it with the ancient, with the tribal ways and everything that's gone before us. Would it be a fair thing to say that it has been deliberately removed from society to have a certain purpose and a certain effect on relationships between fathers and sons? And what do you think the goal of society doing this is for to break those bonds?
The question, as I understand it, is why has society broken those bonds? Like, what's
Yeah,
their motive? Yeah, okay. As I understand it, Chris, it's a sense of control. It's the loss that we experienced. I'll speak for my country, in the United States, the loss that we experienced when we took away the indigenous people's language, and we took away their hair,
yeah,
took away their connection to the earth, anything that reminded them of their ways, so that we could feel more comfortable in that time. And so when that wisdom was stripped, it made it a lot easier to control. It made it
yeah,
a lot easier to know where things were going, and there was less opportunity for rebellion or anything that we didn't understand, coming from across the pond, 300,
yeah,
400 years ago.
yeah,
And so, this is a sad reality, but it's not. Luckily, it's not so long ago that we can't still find it.
yeah,
And and so I believe that, yeah, that we're coming to a time where people are figuring that out, and we're coming full circle
yeah,
to the harm that has been done, and we're starting to reconcile that, and we're starting to remember, and we're starting to ask for that. And we're getting to a stage between father and son where our sons have to become a part of the family again.
yeah,
Our sons can't be burdens financially or otherwise. Our sons used to have a purpose on the family farm, and whatever the culture was, they followed their father's footsteps, and that was what it was.
yeah.
And now there's so much individualism, and it's celebrated in the West. And we have to remember now to celebrate that, and it's beautiful, and remember where we come from at the same time.
Yeah, because it's not that it's been lost, it's been deliberately hidden. And as you said, we go back several hundred years. We look at the people that have gone, and Britain was probably one of the main areas sending ships out around the world, not only to find new lands, but this aligned with a lot of the religious crusades appeared to be something that wasn't going out there just to preach and to just allow people to hear the word of God that they wanted them to hear. This was a deliberate attempt to go into ancient civilizations, native cultures, and destroy the knowledge that they held, whether it's from a medicine standpoint, a cultural standpoint, and certainly removing the core values. We saw things happen in the likes of Canada, where they went in and they took the children and put them into the education system. Do you see literally life as it is now from cradle to grave being a basically a deliberate program to control people and to take away the ancient knowledge from as many people as possible, so it doesn't go against the grain of the very program that they want to push with modern day education and authority and governance around the world? Because this is a major assault, not only on human rights but also the loss of these cultures, that the knowledge that's held within them is so important to the evolution and the development of human growth itself. Would it be right to say that this has all been very purposeful in its design to remove the ancient information that would have empowered people to stop this takeover of humanity itself?
Hmm. Hmm. I like to give some credit to our forefathers and the founders of this nation, that they weren't deliberately creating the tyranny that they were escaping, that they were building something new
Yeah,
with a good heart. I like to believe that.
yeah,
And I do believe that that was intentional, despite some of the hypocrisy and things that, we now know from that time may not have been right. What I understand, Chris, now is that it's really like we all have a choice if we tune into the noise. So is there some deliberateness of like trying to keep the people quiet
yeah,
and trying to keep the, uprisings out of the streets and trying to have everyone think in a way that fits the best interests of the ruling party? Certainly there are still remnants of that.
yeah,
And it's just noise. And I think it's the responsibility. You get to choose what radio station you tune into.
yeah,
You know, you just got to really focus. It's like the stations that come through with the stronger bandwidth, right? That like are really, you can hear them for several degrees beyond, but you have to search in the point one
yeah,
realm of the radio to hear the deeper frequencies, and they're there, they're
yeah,
there, and so it's our responsibility now to be curious and ask a lot of questions. Am I missing something?
yeah,
Hey, something doesn't feel right here. You know, it's this kind of matrix experience. It's a kind of, like there's some little glitch
yeah,
here that doesn't seem right. And so now I get to come back. For me, it's come back to the earth, and go into places that are quiet enough that I can really get that perspective and understand, oh, there's still silence here on the earth.
yeah,
There's still places that are untouched.
yeah,
And what do I feel when I'm here long enough, that allows me to begin to uncover all that's been lost, or as we said, not lost, but just hidden and covered up. So we get to get the noise out now
Yeah,
and get the dust off and say, hey, these treasures are still here for us.
yeah. I mean, when we look at the world as it is today, if we go back to when we were children, mine being a little bit longer than yours,
Not
but
to.
at the end of the day, the world is almost unrecognizable to when I had my childhood growing up. We live in a society that is very fear based. We live in a world where anger and emotion is at a boiling point right now. And again, this is something that is born not only of the distractions and the control mechanisms around us, but born of what seems to be the societal norms where we have one parent families and things going on and a lot of stress put on people. If the role that the father is to play in the relationship with their son, in nurturing him to be everything that he could always be and be the guiding light for their children, being the grandchildren and moving forward, would it be safe to say that the majority of men out there have lost the ability to do this? And this is a possibility of why we're seeing so much chaos around us, because there is no moral core values or rules that seem to make sense to anyone anymore. And it seems to be one big free for all with a huge mix of emotion and violence and cultures around us that are not good for us. Would it be safe to say that the father's role within the world is a lot more important than people realize?
I mean, it's essential, Chris. It's integral to this cessation of violence. It's essential to the suicide rate of men decreasing. It's essential to the education system being fully informed by non-patriarchal tendencies and mindsets. We have a lot of fathers now, the generation of fathers currently that are just becoming fathers,
Yeah,
right? Have a very unique opportunity because your generation and my father's generation, those born in the 60s and 70s were raised by men who came out of the war,
yeah,
and so the mindset was there was a great burden placed upon them of provision, and we're here to recoup what was lost, and we're here to rebuild, and we're in this great moment of American history of like, okay, everything's profiting and we have the modern American family. And so my job is to provide for you, and your mother's job is to emotionally provide for you. And so there's so much that was missed in that moment. If you got lucky and were raised by a hippie dad or something like that, that was experimenting with all those things and had a different consciousness, you may have been exposed to some things. But if you weren't, chances are you had a father that was absent, not necessarily in a neglectful way, but in a way of he leaves at 7 in the morning and gets back at 6 p.m.
yeah,
and just has enough energy to eat dinner and smoke his pipe and go to bed, you know. And this is a story that I hear from a lot of the men that I speak to now that tell me about their fathers and what they missed from them.
yeah,
And so, what our young men need today is fathers that provide and create a safe household, but also fathers who create the emotional bandwidth to be of service to their boys,
yeah,
to take them through the journeys, to have the tough conversations about emotion, about harm, about sex, about impact in the world, what it looks like to be a man, what they learned from their fathers, and that they don't want to pass on, and the things they do want to pass on, and to like name those things is very important
Yeah.
because I didn't get those things weren't named for me. I don't know if those things were named for you. And now you get the chance to tell your boy, here's what I want to gift you,
Yeah.
and here's what I want to let go of. And fathers now get to do the same thing because we have the awareness of here's the harm that's being caused in the world.
Yeah.
Here's the on the news, you don't see a bunch of shooters that are women.
No.
You don't see a lot of the suicides. You see all these things. It's mostly men. A lot of these things are based in our mankind, and it's sad. It's a tragedy, and it's a stark reality that we have to really be with and address.
Yeah. I mean, generational wise, when I look back again, and I mentioned a little bit earlier about when I was younger, um, the world changed massively, and the internet is probably the biggest change we have seen within our lifetime because now social media plays such a key role. Everyone seems to have a smartphone in the hand. Everybody is digesting this fake reality that's projected through the phones on a daily basis through things like Facebook and Instagram and many other platforms. Has the world projected bad role models onto society? Are fathers misguided by society? And would most fathers watching this video now just think we were weird or crazy to even suggest that there's a better way to do things in the world because we don't have 20 million followers on YouTube and we're not touting the fake reality that so many people want to live in?
Yeah, the value system has shifted drastically, and this is exactly where like remembering creating perspective to our fathers and our grandfathers is going to come in deep service
Yeah,
to our mindset and our heart set, and like helping us feel at ease in this world where we're given certain examples,
yeah,
and our young boys are getting fed this, and um, and it's attractive, you know. It's sensational, like sensational is a lot of sensation,
yeah,
and so that their body's naturally going to go towards where there's a lot of sensation, and a lot of movement and energy, whatever,
yeah,
to get them to slow down and like create stillness and learn the tasks with their hands that their grandfathers knew, that their fathers maybe know,
yeah,
maybe not, but that they can learn together. Like there has to be a reorientation, not to dismiss the value of technology and the gift that certain things brings. It's wonderful. I get to connect with you through Zoom today and share this message with the world.
oh yeah,
How
it's a
cool
good
is that?
tool.
You know, it's a beautiful tool,
Yeah,
and it takes a lot of maturity and discipline to use it in a way that is beneficial to yourself, your own mental health, and to the world.
yeah,
And until we have done the work to like strip that away for a moment and remember where we come from, we're going to continue to use it in a way that is not completely pure.
yeah. I mean, when I look back at my grandfather, he was um, he was a military man of the Scots Guards. When he came out of his military service, he was involved with the local boys' clubs for getting boys out into the wilderness and camping and teaching them the core values of life. He was involved with the British Legion. He was there raising money for local charities and people that were less fortunate. And certainly, obviously, coming out of the war, there was a lot of people that needed help. And again, these were major core values. I remember him having, he was so proud of his garden and growing things. He was really involved with being able to grow fruit and food, to have high quality things for the family. And I know times were different then. Society now seems to put that much pressure on people that people, as you said before, they go to work, they come home with about just enough energy to be able to eat the supper before they go to bed and repeat the cycle the following day. And I do believe society has deliberately done that. But I know there's still good people out there that really are true men, but we are seeing something majorly shift within society. And I have no problem with this. People will often say I'm, homophobic, transphobic, whatever. And these seem to be the very people that don't understand the message that I'm putting out. With the whole LGBTQ movement and how many other letters it has behind it now, I don't know because there's new ones being added every day. But if people want to do things, that's fine. Behind closed doors, go ahead. That's great. But I don't think this is something that should be pushed as societal norms to encourage people to experiment in these areas because this is not congruent towards bringing about the good things that I saw my grandfather doing many years ago and, helping men find who they truly are. We seem to have a major deception going on in the world right now that I see as very damaging to the very core values that you're trying to attain for people. What do you think about these movements? Are they a deliberate hijack upon society? And have these movements been hijacked themselves by the very control mechanisms that seek to weaken and undermine men as a guiding light to many others that will come after them within the generations?
Mm. There's a lot of different degrees of what you just spoke, so I want to be really thoughtful in my response. So I'm
Yeah,
going to take a moment. I want to name that I'm not informed enough on these movements to be able to speak directly into the intricacies of why they're happening or how they're happening. So I want to just name that. Um, I think what I can speak to that I understand from the nature of my work is that there's not a lot of great examples of what healthy masculinity looks like. And so that can most likely create confusion or misperception, and it creates a space in which identity can be questioned and gender can be questioned, sexuality can be questioned, and all these things. Everyone may choose what they want to choose, and I'm not going to speak on their
yeah,
choices. What I will say is that until there is more safety represented by what we're speaking to as some of these maybe more traditional forms of masculinity that have been passed down from the first peoples and indigenous cultures and cultures of Africa and Asia that have been stripped over time, until some of these things are renewed in a really clear and healthy and attractive way, there's going to continue to be a lot of segmentation and diversification because things are more fluid now,
yeah,
because there's not the structure. The masculine energy in its essence is a structure, is a container. And when that container is leaky and doesn't seem to really hold what it says it's going to hold, then the barriers break and then the water flows freely wherever it wants to go
yeah,
instead of maybe going to the ocean. And so that's my perspective, being
yeah,
very gentle with that conversation. But I think it's our responsibility to give clear choices and be curious about why do you feel this way, and welcoming all identifying peoples into this conversation. It's something that I'm wanting to work on more of, like, I want people that identify in these different ways to feel safe in the circles that I'm holding, and I want to learn from you and the choices that you've made, not because they're radical, but just because they inform something about something that I'm missing as a leader in this work that can help us all serve each other in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now I'm seeing weak men, and there's a saying that says that weak men create hard times,
Yeah,
and hard times create strong men,
right.
and strong men create good times. But then the good times create weak men. And
Sure.
this seems to be a cycle that we're in, and we seem to be at that part of that cycle where we're in the stage of weak men being around us right now. And I'm not saying that there isn't strong men out there, because I do see a lot of really good people out there trying to get the message across. But it is something that is being exploited massively, and we are in a stage where men will not defend against tyranny and the destruction of the world around us. It's almost giving a green light to those around us to take full advantage of humanity, even more so than they have done prior. When you look at things, certainly in the US, um, where people rose up against tyranny and they stopped it. And this was a group of strong men that were prepared to do that. And everything that they taught to their sons and their grandchildren following that allowed the US to prosper and become the amazing country that it did become. But now we're in times where weak men are not prepared to stand up. And it does appear to be that the failings of that we're seeing in the fact that it's free range for those out there to be able to take advantage of this situation. The cost of living is soaring, the quality of life is soaring, the moral values around the world are diminishing greatly. Is this just a cycle that we will get through? Or are those who are manipulating this for their own gains going to be the ones who are going to try and make this last as long as they can? Do you think we're going to pull this back at some point? Is this cycle going to reverse and men are going to be born, strong men are going to be born out of the very weak times with the weak men that we're having right now?
Absolutely. You know, this season that we're experiencing right now, where it feels like a lot of things are burning, the fire can only consume where there's fuel to
Yeah,
consume, right? So eventually the fire is going to die down because there's not going to be any fuel left for it to consume.
yeah,
And, you know, we're already seeing it. You know, there's shifts in, you know, you mentioned these movements that are happening. There's a lot of good conversations that are happening in our public spheres now, around the way that we speak to women, around the way that we treat, you know, like non-binary people, around how we treat people that are gay, lesbian, bi, you know, whatever it may be, queer, like all of these things that are coming out in sports and politics and
yeah,
wherever, that we're talking about it, and we're creating safety for these things to happen because we're seeing what happens when there's not safety. So to me, that's, you know, even as much as what's happening in our world, it's good that these conversations are happening in public spheres in more conscious ways. And that tells me that it's happening enough in the Atlantic underground and in other places that, it starts to seep. If it happens enough in the smaller communities and in places like, you know, humble servants like you and I, and our message is able to reach through more people and it spreads, then it rises to these places where then it can be spoken about and legislation can change, and, you know, people of influence can speak out about it and people start to listen. And so it's only a matter of time in that sense. I think there's already evidence to
yeah,
that. And the other thing is, Chris, is like, we, spiritually speaking, I'm going to be a little esoteric for a moment. My understanding of this time is that we're on the edge of something in Hindu belief. There's something called yugas, and yugas are
yeah,
periods of time that stretch over 10 to 12,000 years of humanity that shift. in the levels of consciousness. Um, and my belief is that, and what I've learned from my teachers, is that we're kind of on this threshold between what's called Kali Yuga and Dwapara Yuga, and these are our place. Kali Yuga is the time of like the destruction and the consumption and hedonism and all these things, and letting everything die,
Yeah.
so that it can become divine again, um, and move into this place of consciousness
Yeah.
once more and light once more. And we're seeing that in the course of like happening over hundreds of years, in the course of this 10,000 year span. So it feels like we're in the middle of this really intense moment because it's like everything's heating up.
Yeah.
And my belief and what I'm experiencing, and the fact that we're having conversations like this, tells me that there are these pockets of people that are rising up into these conversations in a more brave way and starting to activate those conversations in the real world.
Yeah.
Our job, I don't know if you identify as a healer or a light worker or whatever what you claim in your spiritual manifesto, but like, this is a time where people like you and I and these conversations, these platforms, have to turn up the volume
Yeah.
and have to find a way to make it into the physical realm where we can be heard and seen, so that foundations begin to shift, legislation shifts, conversation shifts, and until we get big enough and make sense of this enough within the context that we already have, be able to speak the language of those who hold the power, so to speak, meet them where they are, and say what we have is more powerful and necessary and is what's coming.
Yeah.
If you want to jump in now, it's a good time, or you can wait until everything you've created is dismantled,
Yeah.
by whatever force that is. You can call it God, you can call it the people, you can call it whatever.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big part of my work, is like really helping people and myself realize the opportunity we have in this moment to ground down what we feel in meditation and at the altar and in these spiritual moments
Yeah.
into a reality that can be shared and bought into, within the greater population.
Yeah. I think what amazes me with what you said there about the cycles, you're these things keep presenting themselves to me, and what you told me there is mirroring what other people are telling me from different areas of spirituality and connection. We met up with a gentleman the other day who's an astrologer, and he was telling me exactly the same thing you're telling me about the cycles, where we're at, where these energies are coming in. And I mean, I know a lot of people have contacted me recently because these energies are being felt by people. It almost feels like a higher calling. It almost feels like the opportunity to connect into this change, this energetic shift that we're going through is becoming more apparent. It's driving a lot of people crazy. A lot of people don't know how to handle it. And we're seeing, again, a lot of crazy shit go on around the world that makes absolutely no sense. But there are those who are harnessing this. There are those who are able to realize that we are here to experience this age of change and to take this with both hands, seize the opportunity and move forward and make a big difference in the world. Really try and find our true purpose, like you have with what you're doing. Now, there's one thing I wanted to ask you. You don't just wake up one morning and go, do you know what? This is what I'm going to do. But for you, what brought about this discovery of something which seems to be majorly important for generations moving forward? What got you to this point, and what was the trigger to make you say, right, I really need to do something with this?
Mm. Yeah, thank you for that question, Chris. There's several checkpoints, and the first one was the shift in what in my work we call, boy psychology to man psychology. There's a shift kind of in the depth psychology realm that happens when we move from this place of um, everyone is responsible for me and I'm not responsible for anything. The world is taking care of me to I'm responsible for the world now.
Yeah.
And it's not about me anymore. And I have to take responsibility not only for my actions, but in the future, but my actions in the past.
Yeah.
So when I became aware of the impact of my actions in the world, it became very clear I had to do some work on myself. And that brought me into men's work. It brought me into the Mankind Project. It brought me into a circle of men who held me in an initiatory container and stripped me away of the things that I thought I needed and said, here we are to help you look at what you actually have.
Yeah.
And I walked through that journey 8 years ago. And that was to feel that group of men holding me and crying with me and yelling with me and experiencing the full range of emotions in a healthy, non-judgmental way that was grounded in something sacred on sacred land.
Yeah.
To sit with the fire, to place my stone in the circle of stones, the way our ancestors would have. All of these things were really profound to me at that moment as a man in his late 20s. And over time, that began to reveal things in my relationship with my father that I had not reconciled, that I had not really asked questions about to him or to his father. And so I began to be more curious. That curiosity led me into a deep realization over time that a great majority of my latent potential in this world, and indeed that which is going to be manifest and create the container for what I do in the world, is related to my father and
Yeah.
to my lineage. I've done a lot of I've been feeling for a long time. That's the gifts of my mother. I've been feeling deeply and I've had great emotional intelligence for many years. I didn't have a place to ground all of that. And so it got expressed in leaky ways
Yeah.
in relationships and other things, and a lack of, scarcity mindsets, whatever it may be, because I didn't have that core foundation. And so healing my relationship with my father over the past few years has given me all the fuel that I need, the wisdom and the knowing and just the love that's now here in my heart that's rooted in something. And when I speak of it, and you can feel it now, like I feel like my energy shifts when I speak to it. It's very true. It's a true source. It's like, the tincture. It's not diluted. It's the real thing. And so getting to bring that now into spaces with men and fathers and sons, and getting to witness, I got to witness it with you and your boy.
Yeah.
You know, we had an hour together and some really beautiful things were expressed, and it was just like, wow, like maybe that made a difference for them.
Yeah.
Maybe that brings something up that they get to pass along to some other men, and they get to pass that down to their generations. And I do believe that it's when it's done in a bigger way and it's continued to drip down to the next level, this is what's going to help create that shift that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so that's my direct experience in my life. My wounds is where I speak from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for people to remain grounded right now during this period of heightened energy and change,
Yeah.
are too many people holding on to things and they just need to let go. I always have the vision of people in a fast flowing river holding on to rocks because of the fear of letting go.
Mm.
And if people just let go, would things change for the better and allow things to come into their lives that weren't there before?
Mm. It's interesting the image that you used of the holding onto the rocks in the river. Um, the I'm going to tweak that image a little bit to answer your question.
Yeah.
What I've always felt is these rocks are actually damming up the waters
Right.
of their life force energy, um, and so like. there's stuff flowing through, right? There's still stuff moving, but it's like seeping through little cracks in the rocks.
Yeah.
And so they're not getting the full perspective of like, my water's getting a little stagnant. It's not flowing the way that I know that it could be. How come that river over there is so strong? Where did those waters come from? I've never seen water move like that. Like we have to be brave enough to take those rocks out, and those rocks come from the wounds of our fathers or our mothers, society, whatever it may be, false beliefs, conditions we placed on ourselves, all the things. We take these rocks out, and all of a sudden, all this water bursts forth. And we need to do it safely so that we don't get washed up in it. But the water will settle. It's not going to be a flood forever, right? The waters will settle. We'll begin to understand the value of this water and where it's going, and we'll begin to move downstream again in a really conscious and strong way. And so I think that's the work. Is it important to let go of things we can't control? Yes. And just as much, it's important for us to take action upon the things that have been left undone by ourselves or by our fathers or by whomever, and not wait for someone else to do it for us and say, okay, it's my responsibility now to like go and unplug that dam and see what's there,
Yeah.
and let those waters flow freely. And I think then we get to decide, cool, here's what I'm taking with me down the river.
Yeah.
Here's what I can control, what I want to carry, and what I want to leave behind. And from that place, we can meet at the ocean of bliss, whatever you want to call it metaphorically. The collective can meet in that place to decide what we do next. But I think that's the image I like to look at.
Yeah. Now it's key that we not only bring a lot of this ancient knowledge back and use it as a tool to help each other, but let's get into the way that you work and let's talk about the
Yeah,
rite of passage.
yeah, yeah. So many men that I speak to in the world today did not have a true marker of I moved on from boyhood to manhood. I mentioned it happened for me in my late 20s. It should have happened a lot sooner to prepare me. It happened a lot sooner because it had to, because people were raising families much younger, and that's how their world was sustained, by producing more young men and young girls to keep the families together and to keep the crops growing and to keep the society moving, right? And so young men had to become men much sooner because of that. And nowadays we have this very delayed adolescence, delayed maturity, delayed evolution, because there's so much comfort and so much safety provided in the world that's built up in our families, and false sense of security from money and material things, that we forget the hard things.
Yeah.
We forget to mark this moment, and we send our boys off to summer camps or whatever it may be, and have that be a substitute. The church, whatever, these are not substitutes for an experience that marks you and says, I felt what it's like to look the beast in the face. I felt what it's like to be alone in the wilderness for a day
Yeah.
or a week or whatever it may be. I felt what it's like to be held by a group of elders, a group of men that have experienced life, and be in the wilderness and learn things and be tested. I'm now aware that I have that capacity as a young man, and that my responsibility lies outside of myself.
Yeah.
Just to even have that awareness, not to go say, go get a job, you're 14, and, go whatever, build a fire every day. I'm not saying that, but to have it, for young men to have a taste, for men to have that, if they missed it, here's what I'm made of, here's what's possible when it's just me and God and nature. And now I can take that and I can bring that back to my people and tell that story.
Yeah.
And now I'm more aware and I'm less dependent upon my mother and my relationship with women and my relationship with the world. And instead, I get to start giving back sooner because I've had that experience sooner.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had that experience as a man and you can't name that, you need to go find it, brother.
Hmm.
Because you're gonna, even if you feel like you're doing good work and you're making money and you have a family and all these things,
Yeah.
you need to have that so that you can reassess. Oh, now I get to go fill in the blanks with things that I missed and go call that person that I, harmed a long time ago, or go heal that relationship, even if the person's not in this body anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, now I get to go see what my father was trying to teach me when I was 15 that I didn't want to listen to because I was busy doing this or that. And so this is what I understand is the importance of this moment,
Yeah.
and what we need to create space for our boys.
That's it. I mean, I think I've always been of a very rebellious nature. Um, you know, I've been able to use this as a tool for good. But I look back at the relationship I had with my father, and we used to do things. We used to go fishing and do sports and things like that. But again, there was always me being rebellious, which didn't really go well with the family bonds in regards to that when I was growing up, especially being a teenager and as I always say to my son now, I look back at when I was, you know, even at 18, and I thought I knew everything. And you don't realize how very little you know until you reach, 30. And then when you're 40, you don't realize how little you knew when you were in your 20s. And it's amazing to see. But I mean, unknowing to the conversations that we're having today, and even before I met you, when my son became a teenager, we actually went and we did a sweat lodge. We gave him that rite of passage. We gave him that celebration of moving on from being a boy into being a man. And it was one of the most powerful things I've ever done. And this really isn't everybody's cup of tea. Most people don't even know possibly what we're talking about. But do you think experiences like this are key for people to go through with the son? I mean, my son is completely we laugh and we joke because it's like I see him and what he has become and what he's grown to. And I look at what I was when I was younger, and people that know me are like, they see my son, he's a good looking kid, and it's like, oh yeah, though he must be having a great time. And I'm like, he's not like me. He's not even a patch of what I was when I was a teenager. But the things that we have done with him, um, and the experiences that we've given him in life were certainly the opportunities that I didn't have when I was growing up, back in England.
Mm.
And that seems to make a big difference. And it's not that the things we've done cost a lot of money. It's not, oh, we'll promise you trips to Disney and we'll do this and we'll do that. These were, getting him out to work on the land. We had a farm when we were in Canada, and his responsibility was to look after the blueberries and harvest them and even sell them. And that gave him a sense of what it was like to earn money. And we had him doing a lot of different chores, and even to this day, we still all work together. He works with me, building what we have here. Although we have very different views on life because of my experience in life and what his goals and what he wants to do. I think mutual respect is something that has to be earned over time, and it doesn't cost anything to earn that mutual respect. But do you think as well that I know we were saying that people are growing up and later in life they're actually finding these values onto who they should be, and sometimes probably not even finding that. But even as an adult now, I always like to think that also I haven't ever lost that inner child. I think it's very important to know that that inner child is in there still and can be called upon for. fun and laughter and just play, basically. Just still being a big kid, as I call it.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
that still key for adults? And is that also being a big kid, never really growing up and having that inner child within you, something that's a great tool to be able to connect with younger generations when you're trying to show them the way that they should live their life with core values and moral values?
Yeah. A son needs to know that his father was also a son,
Hmm.
you know, like needs to see that part of him. And if he wasn't blessed to see, some sons are not blessed to see their father with their father, right? They didn't get to meet their grandfather. If they're not able to see that, it's especially important.
Yeah,
Because that's a model. Like when my dad was near his dad, I got to see him like go through some little boy stuff, and like what would happen and
yeah,
what it's like. And it was really, beautiful for me to see that. And without that context, we would have always remained just father and son, and there would never have been another dynamic,
yeah,
you know. Oh, okay. He was a boy once too. He feels these things too. And to be able to like express that and play with that more grown men, it creates trust, brother. It creates trust. The currency that must be there for a relationship to evolve. And I think you asked a question earlier just now about like, why is it important to have these moments together that are these markers, and it builds trust.
yeah,
I sat with my dad in the sweat lodge and he went through that with me,
yeah.
and it was hard and we did it together, and there's something unspoken now that we trust each other more.
Hmm.
And when we trust each other more, we can share more. And when we share more, there's more connection and there's more healing in our family, and then there's more opportunities for us to do. Then we get to use all our creative energy for the family blueberry business or whatever it is, and not, being, can I talk to dad about this? Can I do this? Do I feel open to this? Those questions are answered for the most part. And then you get to give all your energy to these new ways of serving the world. And then that's the power of that healing that can happen. So you can walk together in these ways again.
Yeah,
My father and I like after many years of inviting him into the work, when I came back to visit in March, he came to a men's circle, like online, and got to be there. I
yeah,
got to see how he showed up. And I was like, this is really powerful. And he might come with us on the retreat this summer with the fathers and sons. He would never have even entertained that a couple of years ago.
yeah,
So it's like because we've done the work to build trust,
hmm,
because we've gone on our own journeys of like showing each other our worlds and playing and having the hard conversations. And now he's willing to entertain those things
yeah.
because that's there. And so it's everything. It's everything.
Like I said earlier with my grandfather, and obviously getting out with the boys' clubs and doing what he did, and getting out into the country and experiencing life outside the towns and the
Yeah.
cities that a lot of people live in. But let's talk about the wilderness based wisdom that
Yeah.
you work with and how that's applied.
Yeah. So I feel so blessed to have this cheat code. It's the best office in the world to have, to get to go walk out on the trail with these men and these boys, and let that be the learning. When we're out there together, we don't need to paste little signs from, you know, Walgreens and Walmart that say, remember who you are and have a great day. And we don't have our tacky boards and whatever, and these things that have all these affirmations.
Yeah,
Those live in the trees, those live in the waters. the metaphors that we need to remember for our own lives become reflected. Nature becomes a reflection for us at all times.
Yeah.
The way we respond to it. Nature can never not be itself. And so we get to, when we slow down and we move at the pace of nature, which takes a lot of slowing down for people, especially in the Western culture, then we get to feel that, and we get to ask certain questions, and we get to sit with the tree and place our hand on it and wait for a response. And we'll get it if we sit long enough. It may be a whole day.
Yeah.
No, the tree doesn't have anywhere to go, so it doesn't need to say anything anytime quickly,
Yeah.
to wait until the coyote crosses your path and take that 10 seconds to be with what it's speaking. All of these things happen when we create greater awareness
Yeah.
with the world around us. And we have to be intentional about that. Otherwise, we'll miss it.
Yeah.
There's so much there that's always available, and it never goes away. And it's just waiting for us to like commune with it.
Yeah.
And it's alive, and it's speaking right now. And so my job is just to bring you there. My job is to get you willing to say yes to come out and be on the trail, and then everything else happens.
Yeah.
I never had a man be like, yeah, nature was okay, like come back from it and be like, oh, I wish nature had done this more. It could use a little more brush up, whatever, like 3 stars for Mother Nature. It's like not, no, it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
When you go out there with the right intention and your heart open, you get what you're there to receive. And so I just get to wear this nice little brimmed hat and walk out there with a staff and say, here it is. We're creating a sacred space
Yeah.
so we can listen deeply and find out what these metaphors mean for our own lives.
Yeah. So if you're going to describe, obviously, anybody watching this are
Yeah.
trying in their own mind right now to picture what it would be like to be part of your group and be involved with what you do. What could you describe to us what a typical thing would be to go out and work with men and sons, fathers and sons? Because it's an incredible thing,
Hmm.
but visually, how would you describe a typical get together would be and what you do within that?
Hmm. Yeah, I'll describe the circle we just did because it was a encapsulation of what this process is. There's the first thing we do is we create the circle. So the container must be set.
Yeah.
And the circle is set so that there's safety. And then within their safety, there's trust. And within trust, anything is possible. So we set a sacred space. We call in our fathers. We call in the directions. We call in the elements. Call in the energies that need to be there with us to help us see other perspectives. Once all those are called in, we create safety another way by making agreements. We did this with you and your son. These things will be kept sacred. These will not be spoken outside of this circle. We will speak for ourselves and not for other men. We will not, interrupt a man's experience. We will listen deeply. We will participate with vulnerability. All these things are created for the safety of the container. And then we get to move into the actual conversations. Deep questions are asked. Why are you here? How are you serving your people? What are your boys teaching you? What does the world need to know right now from your heart? How do you serve them in that way? We begin to explore some of these questions through heart-to-heart connection, through hands on the heart, through embodiment work, through movement. We brought our fathers forth in the circle this past weekend, and we had like a dad dance party. And it was like a soul train, but like embody your father and what his dance moves were. And like, dance down the aisle as your dad. And like these so there's playful things. And there's also very sincere, like, okay, what did you need to hear from your father? Let's recreate that right now. This man is going to hold that space for you,
Mhm.
and you get to feel that, and you get to embrace each other. Um, you know, there's work with the land, chopping the logs, putting your log on the fire, building the fire together in a ceremonial way,
Yeah.
and then being with that energy and just listening to what the fire teaches you and what did your father have to do to create the fire for you? What did he carry? Being able to feel the weight, like really experiencing that weight, like in the rocks, in the weight of the pit, our backpacks on the trail.
Yeah.
So it's really about fully embodying it, experiencing it on a spiritual level, and then being able to share that with the world. And so
Yeah.
we're walking the trail with these questions. We're sitting down at the altar with these questions. We're really living them together, and we're doing it in a way where every man is leaning on each other so that no man falls.
Yeah.
And we're
And
doing
you,
that in a circle. Yeah.
so typically when you get a group together, you'll head off somewhere where there's a lot of nature around you to be able to.
Yeah. Yeah, in a more practical, to answer your question in a more logistical way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is yeah, hitting the trail, the retreats that I've done in the past. Um, you start at the base camp, you move out from the trail, you go out into the wild. We spend a few days out there doing the work. Typically one of those days is a day of silence and day of fasting in which a man gets to be with his vision and listen deeply, without any distractions, with just a journal and a gallon of water,
Mhm.
and come back and tell his story. And then we integrate that medicine and help you live that mission in the world and make a commitment to the world. This is what I'm going to do when I return. And you have men that keep you accountable to
Yeah.
that journey. And so that's the more practical, like, yeah, we're as far away as we can be, um, with the tools that we have, and but not too far away.
Yeah.
So there's definitely stillness and silence and safety, and there's not anybody else around, and it's very intentional that way, so that we don't feel connected to technology or other people or interacting in the way that we normally would. We get to imagine for a day, for 3 days, 5 days, that we are those ancient warriors walking the path. We are your kinsmen in the Scottish Highlands, traversing to the next great kingdom,
Yeah.
and paying attention along the way for what we need, what we were collecting, what stories we want to tell. How do we keep each other, connected around the fire?
Yeah.
So these are the things we're doing.
So what does mature masculinity not only look like when it develops and becomes, but also why is this key and important for people to progress and become what they can truly be?
Mm, yeah. Mature people speak about masculinity often. This word toxic is thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
And what it really is an immature masculinity, a masculine that hasn't developed properly. Um, and and what I mean when I say that is, I mentioned this boy psychology and man psychology earlier. There's this place in which the world revolves around us. There's a place in which we behave in a diminished version of ourselves, um, in a way that is blaming, or in a way that is pushing outwards what really belongs to us to take responsibility for, to wait till tomorrow when something needs to be done today,
Yeah.
to victimize ourselves when really we need to take collective ownership of what's going on in the world. And so there's a mature version of this masculinity that allows a man to be in service, that allows a man to be responsible, to be committed, to have emotional integrity, to be accountable to his word, to be honest, to provide for his family, to defend, to hold that space, to hold that vessel in a way that his people feel safe. The true king is the center of his kingdom, and the people can see him from any direction because he holds that pillar. And so his mature masculinity is that. And it takes a lot to arrive at that place. So we continue to strive towards that combination. In my work, a lot we refer to the archetypes of the king, the warrior, magician, and lover. These are passed down from time immemorial as part of the masculine psyche. And these are all aspects of ourselves that we get to be aware of. What's more alive? What's more developed? What do I need to tend to? How does the king support the warrior in becoming more brave? How does the lover remind the warrior of his humanity? How does the magician give counsel and wisdom to the king in times of doubt? These are all metaphors and energies that get to serve the mature masculine in its essence. Because what happens when it doesn't get developed is we see the kind of leadership that persists in a lot of the world right now at the governmental levels. A lot of the messages that are shared and by the influencers and social media leaders and whatever, when people get to a certain place of power, if they haven't grounded that energy, they will take advantage of it. It's just what happens. We see it. We've seen it for thousands of years. And so we get to put that in a safe space, and that's where the circle comes in. That's where you have the accountability. It's when you've got a dozen men watching over you. You've got a lot of eyes on you. And if they're willing to tell you when you're out of integrity, they're willing to tell you, hey, that wasn't the right thing to do here. You can do better. You must do better. We're watching you. We're depending upon you. Then things begin to shift. And if you don't have that, you're gonna be fallible, and you're gonna make more mistakes.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality. Because our foundation has been taken from underneath us, as we mentioned at the very beginning of this conversation. So we have to recreate that foundation for ourselves.
Yeah. Now, it's okay to make mistakes in life.
Sure. Yeah.
This is how we learn. But how do you see the role of a father being there at the times that mistakes are made by their sons? And how important is it that they are there for these moments? Because obviously there's a lot of people that don't see the father, and there's a lot of people that are unable to have these moments of failure, not scorned for doing it. And we, as I say, we all make mistakes, but be there as a supportive mechanism. How important is it for the father's role to be there as a supportive mechanism as the child grows and finds that there are, life's a little bit more complicated than than it appears to be?
Yeah. There's this image that I'm trying to remember. There was a conversation around, like when a little boy like falls and scrapes his knee, and like the mother's initial instinct is to nurture and to hold him and tell him it's okay and get the bandage and all these things. And so it's a feeling. So it's tending to his feeling, right? And the other image, if I remember correctly, was the father is tending to the vessel, like, and less about the emotions.
Yeah.
So there's an acknowledgement of like, hey, son, I see you're hurting. You got this.
Mm-hmm.
I see you're hurting. Like acknowledging, I see you're hurting. I'm here with you. What do you need? Not, let me get you this thing and let me get you this thing and oh my God, you poor thing. And, I'm not, I don't mean that in a negative way, but like, it's a different kind of acknowledgement.
No, no, I know
So,
exactly what you're
and
saying.
so when a father can do that in ways of like you just lost your first love, or you know, you just got in an accident, or you got an F on your paper, or whatever it is, and it's not, there's no shame. Hey, looks like that hurts you. Let's do something about it. I'm going to spend time with you. We're going to study together. What do you need?
Hmm.
I'm here for you. I'm going to provide that for you. It's asking the boy for permission instead of giving him what he needs right away. What do you think you need right now? How can I help you provide that, my son?
Yeah,
Let's go do that together. Okay, let's go. Let's go walk it off.
yeah,
Cool. I'm here with you. You can lean on me, you know. And those are the kind of and you can translate that metaphor into any matter of gravity, in his life. If a father can be there in that way to model that, then a
yeah,
son feels safe in both the emotional and the physical realm to make these mistakes because he knows that there's going to be someone there to remind him that he's got this. You know,
yeah.
yeah.
Has society become a point now where we're told we can't say certain things because it's offensive? We can't do certain things because they'll class it as being racist, or it's become a point where this whole woke movement that's going on appears to be far more destructive than what it's trying to achieve to protect people. Have we wrapped children, and certainly sons, not certainly not within my life, but I do see it within the latest generations and maybe going back a couple. But are we wrapping them in cotton wool too much? That we're trying to protect them too much from the reality of the world that surrounds them.
Mm. I would say, generally speaking, yes.
Hmm.
And I don't think it's conscious or ill-intended. I think there's so much noise and um, toxicity that is available that an instinct may be to protect, because this is a lot more than hey, growing up on the farm, we just had to worry about the coyotes getting to whatever, the cows. So that was our only thing that we had to worry about penetrating our home.
Hmm.
Like now we have, if our son or daughter's anywhere near a smart device or a computer, there's a world of pain and sex and joy and love and all the things available to them. And so how do we protect them from that?
Hmm.
So there's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with that, because there's certain things developmentally that will be harmful. And so I think that's important. And because of that, and not knowing what to do with it, there's probably a little bit too much of it also.
Yeah,
When is it safe to let my boy go out? It's part of my work. It's like, how do I build trust with parents to like allow your boy to come to the circle and know that he's safe there, to
hmm,
come on a hike and like know that he's going to be taken care of.
yeah,
It takes a really strong container and a lot of trust, especially with all the things that are happening in the world around men that don't handle that trust in a good way, to rework that, to reprogram parents' brains. And so it's like it has to be a really careful, really intentional, like you did with your boy. Like, we have a relationship with the indigenous community here, and we're going to go sit around the fire, and we trust these men and women to hold this space because they've been doing it for generations.
yeah,
Great, this is safe. We can do this here. We can let our boy feel discomfort because it's held in a good way.
yeah,
And so it's a very nuanced conversation. And so I think there's I think we need to maybe wrap them up in the cotton wool, but give them permission to take it off when they feel safe to do it. You
Yeah.
know, not you have to keep this on at all times.
No.
Go out with this because you may need it for the initial, hurdle. Take it off when you feel ready to be free.
Yeah. Because that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a little bit earlier about, the protection side of things, and it is a man's role to be a protector. And when I was growing up, and there was older boys that where we lived wanted to pick on people and fight people and whatever. And my father always said, he said, if anyone gives you any trouble, he says, you go at them. He says, and you don't stop until you're finished, and you make sure that you defend yourself and you fight them. He always said, never start a fight. He says, but be damn sure that you're the one that finishes it. And then that's what I always thought was great about what he told me. But society today, we have things in school about bullies. Most people think that if there's trouble, they should call the police, and it's taken away. It's basically given our power away to other people to look after us. Is that a major thing in society today that needs to change, where people should stand in the power a lot more?
Mm. Yeah, again, I think it's like there's like these extreme examples, right? And it's happened to a lot of like the diminished man you talked about earlier, the weakened man. Is this like, okay, there's a pacifist side of this where I need to be compassionate and like walk away and like not pay attention to this bully and his words. Or there's like a just go straight to throwing bows
Yeah.
and like there's a lot of violence and there's blood. There's a place in between where like clear boundaries and a clear stance is taken that allows that bully to be siphoned
Yeah.
and pushed back into his own territory. And maybe there's a little bit of physical, it's like they need to be reminded, hey, don't get in my space. This is my space. You're crossing a line here, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to be. My sovereign is not going to be threatened physically, emotionally, whatever it is,
Yeah.
because of your violation. And so it's like I've never been in a fight. I've never hit another man in a place of defense. Um, there was a moment where I wish I knew what to do, certainly, and I didn't have that capacity. No one taught me that. I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't have access to it.
Yeah.
So there definitely needs to be arenas where we can access that in a healthy way. And there's like some men have like there's like these conscious fight clubs, and in certain men's work circles, there's some like, sparring and these kind of things in a sacred held container. So men can feel what it's like to really bump up against another man in his full physical capacity. And so we don't fear it.
Yeah.
And we've tapped into it just in case we
Hmm.
have to.
Yeah.
God forbid we don't have to, and we don't normally have to because we're not living in anywhere close to the culture we were living, in the 17th, 18th century, whatever.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we need to be able to access that for sure and do it in a modern context
Yeah.
that's healthy and that can be translated.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll wrap this up shortly, but before we finish now,
Yeah.
can I ask you about what the gifts of our fathers are?
Yeah. For me, the gifts of my father was responsibility, he's with us. Right responsibility, integrity, doing what you say you're going to do for the people you say you're going to do it for. He passed along to me the ability to work with my hands, to build and to fix and to repair. He passes down to me patience in doing those things, ingenuity.
Mhm.
He passes down to me the gift of provision and security for our family that allowed us to grow up in a way that created a lot of opportunity for expression and freedom and joy and connection. These are the gifts from my father, and the gifts of our fathers in general is what will be translated in some way, some form, to how we serve the world,
Yeah.
directly or indirectly. There will be some alchemical version of that that comes into our hearts as men, and that we get to really embody as we serve the world. And so the ability to find that and to see even the things that don't feel like gifts, our father's relationship to alcohol or his absence or abuse of some kind. What was the gift in that in the long run?
Mhm.
Being able to see that and turn those imperfect gifts into positive gifts.
Yeah.
So this is something that I speak to men a lot about. And when we can reorient that, we have just a wealth of knowledge and experience and wisdom that we can tap into that can serve us and will serve us.
Yeah. Excellent. Now, you're going to be doing some touring around. You're going to be taking this to
Yeah.
different places to allow people to experience it. Can you tell us how people can find you, how they can contact you, and how they can get involved with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I go by Disciple of the Wild. This is a very meaningful aspect of myself. That's my website, discipleofthewild.com. On social media, that's my name. And you can find information about my retreats, my circles. The next Father Son cohort will be open for enrollment in August and starting in November. This is a 6-month container that I run with fathers and sons. Takes us through the hero's journey experience into a threshold retreat, 6 days in nature, walking together, being in silence together, the journey I described earlier. And so, yeah, there are retreats coming up. There's a cohort opening up, and I'm here for coaching, embodiment coaching for men, helping them secure their purpose, helping them make sense of what's going on in the world and bring their spirituality into reality.
Yeah.
So I'm always available for that. And I'm excited to be of service. I'm excited to see what this conversation brings up in people's hearts and what it allows us to move forward into the world. So,
Yeah. No, I think people are going to get a lot out of this. I think people are
mm,
going to really start to think deeply about their relationships and how purposeful and how we can affect people's lives and certainly change it for a more positive way.
yeah,
And not only that, like it sounds, it might sound to a lot of people that this is one-way traffic. The fathers receive as much out of this as the sons do.
100%.
And it's building that bond between them, and that trust and everything that we spoke about during the interview here,
Yeah,
that is key and important for people to really truly find themselves and build a much stronger person moving forward for both of us. And that's what I found really incredible about working with you.
thank you, brother. Yeah, thank you for that reflection. I really cherished our time together, and I'm glad that singular evening has led to this conversation, and who knows what
Yeah.
goes on from here. And so I'm just thank you for this platform that you're holding for people like myself to speak our piece. It was really exciting to be asked these questions in a new way. There's
Yeah.
a lot of questions you asked today that haven't been asked, and so I really just thank you for what you're holding here, and may God and Spirit and your community continue to raise you up in that process.
Thank you very much, Adam. Keep in
Mm,
touch, my friend. I'll put the links to your website in the show notes below.
beautiful.
And everyone share this, because this is a powerful tool for every father and son out there to pick up and run with it and
Mm,
find out who they are.
mm.
Thank you very much, Adam. You take care, my friend, and we'll see you soon.
God bless you, brother.
Cheers, mate.